and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Maria Lopez, and it's my privilege to welcome you to the Greek Orthodox Ladies Philoptochos Society's continuing series of lectures and programs addressing issues of interest and concern to our members, our stewards, and our community. We are deeply honored by the presence of our spiritual father, His Eminence Archbishop of Philoptochos of America. Please welcome His Eminence, who joins us tonight on his very first visit to the Center of Philanthropy. Your Eminence, we welcome you to our home, to your home. We thank you for your support for Philoptochos, for your guidance, and for taking time from what we all know, because we watch you all over the United States, is an extraordinarily busy schedule to be with us for this important evening and event. On behalf of stewards across the Archdiocese, we offer our thanks and our gratitude. Tonight we're going to hear from a clergyman and a speaker who moved and energized all of the delegates at the 2018 National Philoptochos Biennial Convention in Boston. Reverend Dr. Nicholas Louh has traveled to be with us from St. John the Divine, is that right? Did I get it right? In Jacksonville, Florida, where he grew up and where he has been the senior pastor since 2007. An inspirational speaker, Father Louh shares daily messages on radio and television and is a member of, are you ready for this, of the God Squad, a local public radio program lecturing it gathers clergymen of various faiths who discuss ethical and moral issues. His daily messages on social media have attracted thousands of followers from all over the world. Tonight, Father Nicholas is going to talk to us about turning our faith into a hands-on experience that gives us hope. Father Nicholas has touched on the keystones of Philoptochos: faith, hope, and hands-on experience, which we've all been doing for years now. And I know that this very eager and very attentive audience, both real and virtual, join me in welcoming him to the Center of Philanthropy. It is my great pleasure to introduce Father Nicholas Louh.
Good evening to all of you, and first and foremost, it's a blessing to be with His Eminence Archbishop of Philoptochos. I'll take a little pride in saying that having His Eminence, his first trip as Archbishop was in Jacksonville, Florida, and we are so blessed, and the impression that you left on our hearts, Your Eminence, still resides in us today, and we as a church stand united with you and are praying for your continued guidance, your oracy, your vision that you wish to lead us with. And so thank you for blessing us tonight. I had no idea that you were going to be here tonight. And so no pressure, all right? But to sweet Maria, and thank you so much for the invitation to be here. And you, the beloved sisters of the Philoptochos, we are a better church because of you. Never, ever doubt what you are doing in the lives of our church and those who are in need, and how you make the priest life better. So thank you for what you do and what you're continuing to do. Tonight, I just want to encourage you. I just want to inspire you a little bit, maybe to re-energize you, because I feel at my heart that the heartbeat of Christ is in the action that I want to talk to you about tonight. I literally think that the heartbeat of God literally beats to the sound of this action. And today I want to talk to you about what it means to make a difference, to lift the fallen, to give hope to the hopeless. As Maria mentioned, I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, born and raised in Jacksonville, and you all should know that Jacksonville has one of the largest Navy bases in the country, on the East Coast, in fact. And one thing about any type of military person, if you ever come across someone who's in the military, I know many of you do know, or maybe even have served in the military, they will have a certain mantra, a certain belief system that is literally woven in their very core. It is something that they believe in, something that they follow in everything that they do. It is this statement: leave no man behind. Said another way, it says, not on my watch will I allow someone to be left in the battlefield. The ancient Greek Spartans perfected this. And this is something that we as in the Greek Orthodox Church should be very proud of. There's a lot that we can take from our ancestors. But the ancient Greek Spartans, whenever they would go into a battle, they would hit their spear on the ground. And then they would have their shield. And there was a statement, a motto, a mantra that they followed. And it was this: this is my shield. I will not let my brother leave its shadow. In other words, I'm always protecting my brother in the battlefield. Friends, life is like a battlefield. And day after day, we're seeing people who are struggling, truly struggling with battles. Maybe some of you, or maybe someone that you know, is dealing with a battle of sadness. They lost a loved one recently. They're just coping with the mourning of losing someone that they meant so much to them. Or maybe you know someone that's going through a battlefield of a marriage problem. Their marriage is not where it needs to be. Maybe for some of you, you're going through a battlefield of just negative thinking. It could be the sunny, beautiful day that you guys have in New York City, but you'll find something negative about it. There's a battlefield that's taking place. And studies are showing that we are at almost the highest levels in almost every facet of negative battlefields than we've been in recorded history. Just listen to some of these statistics. Today, 1 in 5 of our children came home because they were bullied. Today, 50% of our young women, adolescent girls, came home questioning their self-worth, their value. Today, there were 6,646 divorces in this country. Today, there were 4,700 people diagnosed with cancer today. Today, there were 22,000 funerals that took place in this country, in the world. Today, 20% of our country is struggling with depression. And some of the more, I think, tugging at the heart ones are, today, 20,000 children died of starvation. Life is a battlefield, and many of us, we can hear those statistics and we can say, Father Nick, we kind of get it, we understand that, but I'm just too busy in my own life. It's not really my problem. And instead of having the attitude of leave no man behind, the attitude could be, it's every man for themselves. Or not on my watch can be the attitude, instead of saying, it's just really not my problem. There was an interesting study that I encourage all of you to research on your own. It's called the Good Samaritan Experiment. It was done in the 1970s, check this out now, at Princeton Theological Seminary. They were interviewing and doing tests and studies on seminarians. And what they did is they basically gathered all these seminarians and they divided them into 2 groups. One of the groups, the seminarians were tasked to go write a sermon on the Good Samaritan. And y'all all remember that story. That's the parable of when there was someone that was beaten and bruised and robbed, and a priest walks by, a Levite walks by, and then there's that Good Samaritan that comes and takes care of them. And I'm obviously paraphrasing that beautiful parable. And then the other half of the group was told to go write a paper. All you have is 5 to 10 minutes to go write a paper about what it means to be a papa, to be a priest. And so they divvied up these 2 groups and they said to them, all right, now you're going to go into this building that is totally adjacent. It's on the other side of the campus. And between the buildings, there is this large courtyard, which these 2 people that were doing the study, Darley and Batson, put an actor there who was playing the role of a homeless man. And what was astonishing is here these students who were becoming papadas, priests, who were writing papers on what it meant to be a priest, or writing a sermon on the Good Samaritan, would walk by one after the other of this actor who was on the ground playing the role of a homeless man. He was coughing, he didn't smell right. What's my point? Hurry is the enemy of help. And I want you to understand this important principle tonight, and that is, you are the hands and feet of Christ in this world when people are in battle. That we have to recognize that we are called to find the needs in this world and to fill them, to find the hurt in this world and to heal it. That we are the everybody that God needs to help this somebody who is in a battle tonight. And you know, if you study the Bible, and I encourage all of us, the Bible says, never let the word of God depart from your mouth. It should be constantly something that we're reading and being fed with, in addition to the traditions of our church. But if you study the sayings of Christ, and they've done studies on this, one of the most often used themes that Christ speaks about is what you as the Philoptochos do all the time: make a difference. Over 2,161 times in the Bible, Christ is telling us, I need you to make a difference. Why did God spend so much time on that one topic? Why did he spend so much of his life preaching about that one topic? I think there's several reasons. We could probably spend days talking about it. But let me give you a few to think about. I think Christ spends so much time on this one topic because it is our purpose. His plan is our purpose. Let me kind of break this down a little bit for you. St. Paul says in the book of Ephesians that you are a masterpiece created in Christ Jesus. Here's the catch. There's a comma in the English translation of it. There's a comma that says, to do what? To do good works, which I have prepared for you. It's in Ephesians chapter 2, verses 10. You should go back and read it. In the book of Psalms 139, the poet says, he's saying this prayer, and he says, I praise you, O God, because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Like God is telling us that nothing because of what we have done, but because of who Christ is in us, that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And God yearns for us to recognize that when you go around or you hear people say, you know, Father Nick, I just don't know what my purpose is in life. I'm just kind of trying to figure things out. Listen, don't make this rocket science. God's telling you what it is. I need you to make a difference in this world. I need you to go into that battlefield that you see in this world and be a difference maker in that world. It's interesting. I do a lot of studying on the human body. I think if I wasn't a priest, I probably would have gone into medicine. I think my dad early on would have wanted me to do that when I told him I was going to go into the seminary. Like most fathers from the Mediterranean, the Middle East, there's a level of excitement, but then level of worry. But if you study the human body, it's quite interesting. When you were just 1 day old, while you were still in your mother's womb, the amount of DNA in your body, if you were to simply stretch it out, would be 6 feet tall. If you were to just take yourself now, you have trillions of cells. If you just said, you know what, I want to know what the DNA in every one of those trillion of cells are, and I just simply want to line them up to see the distance that it will go, that you can go from this beautiful facility, which, by the way, is absolutely extraordinary. You can leave the front door here, and if you just wanted to go to Times Square, it's a place that is an interesting place, if you will allow me to say that. You can go to Times Square, and then if you decide to go to the moon, you could go to the moon and back 1,500 times. When God says that you're fearfully and wonderfully made, or that you are a masterpiece, He's not just saying it just to say it. He's telling us that I've created you, you are my workmanship, I'm in you to do what? To do great works. That's number one. His plan is our purpose. I love how, if you read the writings of St. John Chrysostom, listen to what he says about what it means to be generous, and he wrote a whole book on this. But listen to what he says about this. He says, lift up and stretch out your hands, not to heaven, but to the poor. For if you stretch out your hands to the poor, you have already reached the summit of heaven. But if you lift up your hands in prayer without helping the poor, making a difference in that battlefield, he goes on to say, it is worth nothing. That's the words of John Chrysostom. Here's number two. If his plan is our purpose is number one, then remember this: heaven is our home, not earth. We live in a great country, and I am all about God bless America, and we should be. God bless America, because we have a nation that allows me to give a presentation to all of you without the fear or worry of being persecuted for doing that. But as we live in a society where we are blessed in so many levels, it's easy to think that this is your homeland, to actually believe that this is going to be your life. In fact, you hear sometimes the young people say, Father Nick, you only live once. To which I always respond, no, you live twice. And sometimes we invest so much in this life. And listen to me, friends, and I'm going to call you family, okay? Because I don't like to, we're not members, we're family. This earth will lie to you. St. Paul writes in the Book of Philippians, a great book, 4 chapters, you should read this book. He says this, he says, do not let the enemy, he says, do not allow yourself to be caught up in the debauchery of this world, because your citizenship, listen to this, is in the kingdom. He's telling the people of Philippi, who back in those days had a level of independence to themselves. They were this free little province there, and he's telling them, be careful. Don't make your time on this earth and think that this is it. Listen to what Paul, in writing to Timothy, says this. This is one of my favorite Bible verses, and I know we shouldn't have favorite ones, but this one just always speaks to me. 1 Timothy chapter 6, Paul is writing to a priest who's named Timothy, one of his disciples, by the way. He tells him that when you're preaching, now this is how I look at it, that when you're preaching, preach this to the people. Command those who are rich in this present world. Now, I know that all of us, we may not feel it, but we are rich compared to the world. I mean, 70% of the world lives without a roof over their head. We are doing pretty good. Most of the world lives on less than $10 a day. So those who are rich in this present world, not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth in the earth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who so richly provides us everything for our enjoyment. Again, Timothy, command them to do good, to be rich in good works, and to be generous and willing to share, to make a difference. And listen to this. This is the period and then the statement. God never gives you a problem without giving you a promise. In this way, you will lay up treasures for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age. And then he goes on, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life. And I just want to give you an encouragement word, that it's easy to think this is it. But there is a life that's coming up, and you will spend more time in that life than in this life. Here's number 3. His plan is our purpose. Heaven is our home, not earth. Time is short, but the opportunity is great. My dad passed away a couple years ago from cancer, and his life was the American dream. My dad was born in the Middle East. He was born in Jerusalem, or in Jaffa. My mother was born in Jerusalem. And they came here with absolutely nothing. My dad had $200 in his pocket when he came here, like many of your family who came here with absolutely nothing and worked. My dad's first job was working at Burger King, flipping hamburgers. And he worked his way up. And when I look at his life and I look at how my life was several years ago prior to him being diagnosed with cancer, I had just come back from doing a missionary trip in Kenya, Africa, in an area that is, I will tell you, if you have ever thought of what poverty looks like, this is that area. It was in Turkana, where the children would run up to you and they would just yell out, "Mata, Mata," and I was sharing this on the video yesterday if you saw it on Facebook, which meant water, water. And there will be nothing that will ever pierce your heart than when you hear a 7-year-old boy saying to you, "Mata, Mata," as if this is like he needs something to drink. And so we were there, and I have to tell you that the miracle, this is all on video, by the way, that the people, the chief priest, the elder of the village, said to us, if your God is the real God, because they don't believe in God, they believe in ancestral worship. They worship their ancestors. He says, if your God, this guy named Jesus, if he is really your God, tell him to make it rain, because it hasn't rained here in a year. And if your God makes it rain, then we will all believe. And we sat there, and I was with a couple of other clergy and people, and when someone asks that of a priest, your knees buckled, because you see on the one hand the sadness that they're going through, but you also recognize that it's not in your hands, it's in God's hands. And so we give them the statement that, our thoughts are not his thoughts, that what is his will, but we will pray and that we will pray together. And so we started praying, and that night I would love to tell you that it started to rain, but it didn't rain. The people that night went to bed hungry and thirsty. The following morning, we get up in the morning, and I will tell you this, and we have this all on video, by the way. We get up in the morning, and it starts to have these dark blue clouds that come from the east, west, north, and south, and they just simply come upon that village. And we had prayed, and it just starts to rain. And I don't know what kind of rain you guys get in New York, but in Florida, when we get a rain, it floods. And it rained and created a river of water. And it was humbling because you would see these people who did not have utensils. They were simply on their hands and knees drinking from this river of water that was coming there because they were so thirsty. And so I went from that, came back on a Saturday, to Monday. My dad, who was 67 years old at that time, perfectly good health, says I'm going to the doctor for a routine checkup, has a massive seizure in the office, and gets diagnosed with cancer. On Tuesday, my father-in-law, perfect health, on that Thursday of that week, was diagnosed with cancer, and they would die 6 months apart from each other. And I'm not asking for any type of sympathy, but my point in saying that time is short, but the opportunity is great, is that time on this earth is short. That all of us realize that time on this earth is limited. I was listening to a 9/11 documentary recently, and as I was listening to it, it just was simply honing in on the last phone calls that people were making in the buildings, in the Twin Towers, and those that were still trying to be, that were on the flights and what they were saying. And almost to the T, none of them were talking about, did you take the trash out? Did you make sure that things were done? All of them were saying, I love you, I care about you. And my point to you is that because this time is so short, that we are called to make the best and make every opportunity to make a difference. I love what St. Paul says about this. He says, be careful. Don't be unwise, but wise. And then he goes on to say, make the most of every opportunity because problem, and then the solution is that what will happen is because the days are evil. The word opportunity in the Greek is not the word chronos. They don't use the word chronos in the word opportunity. It's actually the word kairos, which His Eminence could speak hours and hours on. But in my understanding, it is basically an opportunity that's opened, a time that is outside of the linear time that we know as chronos. And this kairos is this opportunity that opens and then doesn't open. And that we are challenged ourselves to make sure that we're seizing that opportunity. So I did this thought maybe that this might be a little bit of a good illustration for you. And it's this little ruler. And if you guys all should have one, if you can take it out, just if you don't mind. So some of you, I'm sorry, this was done in my office, so it's not really that advanced. But if you don't mind, if you could pick the date that you feel like you're going to go to be with the Lord, you could do whatever you want. Just simply take that number. And I'm going to be bold. I'll lead you, probably down the wrong path, but I'll lead you. I'm going to say I want to be 95. Okay, so I'm going to just put that. And I want you just to bend it at that 90, or whatever number you want, okay? Just whatever number it is. Whatever you feel like, that's the amount of years I still want left, okay? All right. And then once you do that, just take the piece off, and then from that number to the 110, take that and just get rid of it. You don't need it, okay? So now I want you to take that and I want you to put, bend it where your actual age is right now. And I know some of you may be very uncomfortable about doing that, so you could cover your hands or whatever, but so. Yes, this is a. All right, so this was like the little intermission. halftime show, all right? So where are we going with this, Father Nick? All right, so let me tell you. In an ideal world, this is it. At the end of the day, this is it. Like, if sometimes we just think that, oh, that time is, I can wait, that I can just kind of put this off. At the end, we don't have much time. And I don't say this to scare you, but I tell you to prepare you, not only for your own salvation, but also for what we can do in this world. You know, one time a lawyer is asking Jesus, just boil all of this down to me. Just tell me what I need to know. That's my translation of that. I hope I'm not being in any way disrespectful. But so Jesus says to him, you want me to boil this down to you? He says, love God with all your heart, mind, and your soul. And love your neighbor as yourself. And what he was saying is that you cannot love me if you don't love him. You can't get to me if you don't first see me in him. So I gave you the why. Like, why does God spend 2,161 times talking about making a difference? I believe at my core, friends, that one of my responsibilities obviously is doing the liturgy and practicing the sacramental theology of this. But it is also to make our faith practical in ways that you can take home with you. If I leave you just with this presentation of all about the whys and never give you the how, then I've failed. So let me give you the how. Like, how do we go about doing that with a level of being re-energized, being focused more on what God wants us to do? So let me give you just 5 reasons. If you want to write these down, you can. If you don't, you can go back online and listen to it. But here's number 1. Remember this, in everything you do, it's not just about making a difference. Choices lead, feelings follow. What do I mean by that? So often we allow our feelings to lead us. The problem is with feelings, if you do any studying on feelings, is feelings leave you. You can watch a 30-second commercial or a 30-second soundbite on the news about Hurricane Dorian, and then you might feel moved to give. But once that commercial is over, or once you see a commercial of people that are hungry in Africa, after that commercial is over, oftentimes that feeling has gone. And many times, unless we truly make it a point, we allow our feelings to move us. I'll give you an example. For me as a priest, this is what we do. We'll give a sermon, we'll have a Stewardship Month sermon, where we try to tug at the hearts of people and move them. And yes, there's a point in doing that. But there should be a point at which we don't need to even give those type of sermons. That yes, we remind our people about the importance of giving, but the reality is that we should be intentional. Like, we shouldn't wait for a boulder to come on our head to say that there are women being sold into slavery right now in this country. That we shouldn't have a boulder that tells us, you know what, there's people in this country that are dying of hunger. 19,000 children in this country do not know where their next meal is coming from. And I share that with you because sometimes we allow ourselves to kind of just follow along with whatever I'm being moved or whatever my feelings are. And the reality is that feelings, studies and research show this, are oftentimes can be not only misleading, but they oftentimes take us into a multitude of different directions. So be intentional. In other words, like this, your idea is, let my eyes, God, be your eyes. Let my ears be your ears. This is what you would be praying every day. Let my mouth, my words, be your words. I'm not waiting for me to see the person on the side of the road. I'm already being intentional that I'm going to do something and make a difference in someone's life. Every day, it's on my to-do list that I have. Choices lead, feelings follow. Here's number 2. Something that I struggle with, and I'll be open and honest. If you listen to our shows on Healthy Minds, Healthy Souls, and it's a brochure for you guys, Roxanne and I are an open book. We're not perfect people. She's a psychologist. I'm a priest. We got married because I can get my therapy for free. But that always makes people laugh. I don't know. But really, on paper, we would look like, we would have the best, we'd have the theology and the psychology. And what I have found is that the verdict is still out on how well we're doing as a couple. That we're not all there. We make a lot of mistakes. And this is one of them. Slow down and look around. Slow down and look around. In this country, the average time to clean up after dinner is 4 minutes. In the 1960s, it was 20 minutes. Why is that time so short? Is because many times we're not even sitting down to eat. We're getting this to-go stuff and eating quick and just tossing in the trash. Those days of us sitting down together and having meals together we don't see that happening. We see everyone kind of texting and talking to each other through text and cell phones. We see ourselves, these are the facts today, that we are working more hours now than we were back in the 1950s and getting less sleep, by the way. How many of you gotten a good night's sleep recently? You don't have to raise your hand. It just was a rhetorical question. And just like those seminarians, those Princeton theological seminarians, sometimes we're in such a hurry that we forget to help. I was flying up here from Jacksonville, and if you've ever flown from Jacksonville to New York, and those of you that are watching us live that are from Georgia or South Carolina or North Carolina, I say this in a funny and kind way, not in a disrespectful way, but you'll just see woods. I mean, it's just woods and forests for like state after state. And then you see a city, and when you're looking in the airplane and you're looking down, you see a city that's more woods and more woods. But as you're coming into New York, you start coming through and you start seeing different cities. And when you're flying and you're looking out that window today, when I was doing that, I looked down and I know that there's people there, that there's people there that are walking, that are going to their work, going to their place of worship, going to their homes. But when I'm watching them, I can't see them. I can't see their faces. And I can't see the people. And I think that's how life is sometimes for us, that we're in such a hurry to do this and to that. And how many times in the Bible God says, slow, slow, slow. I got some people that are in a battle right now that need you. I just want to encourage you to take the time to just look around. Slow down, look around. Here's number 3. Choices lead, feelings follow. Slow down, look around. Number 3 is something that none of you struggle with, but maybe I do, and that is don't judge, but love. Like, we judge people by the way in which they look. The homeless man, the widow, the socioeconomic status of people, their values. We are not on this earth to judge people. We are called to love them. One of the most powerful stories in the Bible that I think speaks to this is found in John chapter 8. I encourage all of you to listen to this. So Jesus is in the temple and he's giving a lesson to the people. And so as he's giving this lesson to the people, these Pharisees, these other clergymen, they come to test Jesus, and they bring this woman who has just had an affair. And they bring her into the temple, and they say, and they're obviously mocking Christ. They're saying, you Christ, this woman right here just committed adultery. And in the Old Testament, committing adultery, you would be stoned. So he says, what would you say to do with her? And the church fathers have a beautiful way of what happens, because there's no dialogue that takes place with Jesus and those people initially. Jesus just simply finishes his Bible study, his lesson with them. He stands up and he goes and writes on the sand floor. And the Bible just simply says that he just starts writing in the sand. It doesn't say what he's doing, just simply writing in the sand. And then he looks at those people, he says, which one of you is without sin? Throw that stone. And then he goes back to writing in the sand. And then those guys just simply get up and walk out. That's the whole story right there. And so some of the church fathers, they remark and they make statements that say that when Jesus was on there writing on that dirt, he was writing their sins. And they were going, oh my gosh, this guy knows me. He knows everything about me. And I just need to walk out. And I just want you all to know this, and I say this in a totally respectful way, but he's written down everything. Like everything. And he's written it down. And the moment that you attempt to try to judge someone, just take a step back and say, I'm not here to judge. Even amongst ourselves, sometimes we're like that. I'm here to love. There was an amazing story about that took place in the New York City subway. Many of you may have heard this. This was years ago. A young man had his 3 children on the subway, and they were there. It was late at night, and they were on there, and the kids, he had a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old, and they were all jumping up and down on the subway. And there was this group of people that came in. I don't know if they had just come from Carnegie. I don't know. They had just seen some performance. And so they come in there, and they're looking at this father who has these kids. They're just jumping around and acting silly. They're jumping on the pole. They're jumping on the chairs. And the father just keeps having his head down like this. And one of the ladies there eventually gets so frustrated. She goes, "This is unbelievable." She goes to the father, and she goes, "This is the problem with this world today. The way you're raising your children to just run around and jump around here, jumping on the poles, on the chairs. This is the problem with the way this world is right now. And you need to be a better parent." And he looks over at her, and he says, "I'm so sorry." He goes, "But my wife has just passed away from cancer. And I don't have the words to tell those children that their mother is no longer with us." New York City subway. And I just want you to know, friends, that when you get on that subway, when you see those people, you have no idea what their story is. Just imagine sometimes, what could their story be? What are they trying to teach us? What could we be learning there? Don't judge, love. Number 4, I would say, is walk with them. And I don't know about all of you, but I hope that you know that you all have gifts. Like you all have gifts. Your gift may not be up here to give a presentation with the Archbishop present at all. And I absolutely love His Eminence on just so many levels, and excited about our future. But you may not be called to just be a public speaker. Or you may not even be, maybe you don't like interpersonal conversations, but you all have a gift. Peter says this in 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 7 and 11. Each of you should use your gift to serve others. Well, Father Nick, what is my gift? That's for you to search. Like maybe you're great at writing. You don't want to get on the phone, but you can write a card. Maybe you like to get on the phone and you can talk and communicate. And all of you have beautiful smiles. You can smile at people. You can give them a word of encouragement. Sometimes, friends, I think we run very good sprints, but not good marathons. Take, for an example, someone that passes away in your community. And I found this firsthand with my mom. In our household, and much like I'm sure for many of you who have lost a spouse, you know that so much of your identity is your spouse, especially if you've been married to them for a long time. And I would see my mom, who's probably tuning in right now watching this, would see her in our church hall, walking around like an orphaned child because my dad was no longer with us. And sometimes I wonder, early on there was all these, Vi, what can we do for you? We're with you, we're supporting you. And St. on the Divine, the community is outstanding. I mean, I'm sure got a lot of great treatment, but that's how they are. But sometimes I wonder about other churches that after that week is over, where are the phone calls? Who's checking up on that widow? Who's checking up on that kid that's kind of by himself in the church hall? Who's talking to that divorced person that's in our community that is really kind of embarrassed because she's divorced and we are in a Greek church and oh my gosh, the kotsompolio, the gossip. Who's reaching out to her? Who's reaching out to the children that are, the young girls that we see sometimes just wearing clothes that we sometimes are appalled by, and reaching out and saying, hey, look, can we go hang out? Who's mentoring those people? What's my point? My point is that we need to walk with them. When Christ was on the cross, He said 7 statements that are in the Bible. We don't know if there were more. There probably were more, but there were 7 statements that He said. But when He was on the cross, He said one thing. He said that moves me, and it's about this topic tonight. He said, assuredly, He's talking to the thief now, who's a criminal. Assuredly, you will be with me in paradise. That while He was in immense pain, He still mustered up the energy to say, you know what? For sure, assuredly the translation is also for sure, I'm walking with you. we're going to go to the paradise. So should we. Final one. Choices lead, feelings follow. Slow down, look around. Don't judge, love, walk with them. And then here's the last one. Lead them. This is where a lot of us, I think where we fall short. Not necessarily the Philoptochos, I don't think that, but I think we as a society, and those of you that are tuning in online can attest to this, is Christ says, let your light so shine that they see your good works, but do what? Give me the glory. In other words, that you're constantly shining that light on Him. I love Costco. And I love Costco because on Sundays after church, on every single aisle, there is what? Samples. There are freebies. Don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about. It ain't just me going to get some free samples, but Costco is a place that every aisle has all you can imagine. I mean, recently I was there and they had pita chips with crab dip, and it was just. And oftentimes I go there and I'm confessing, okay, that I'll get more than just one sample. I'll take a couple of them. I do it. I know you don't do it, but I do it. Okay, it's all right. But I was thinking about, these people that are giving this sample. And, when you go to get that sample, they're telling you, here, try this. And when you try it, you can have some of that. You can go buy that. You can get that. And I think that's how Christ wants us to be. That when people come to you, they see Christ in you. And they're like, you know what, I want to taste and see how good the Lord is. That I want to taste some of that. I want to experience some of that. That all that you do, all the work that you're doing, if you never tie it back to Christ, listen to me, that's the only gift that keeps on giving. And God needs us to constantly be saying, no, bring them to me. Don't just do it on your own. It just simply becomes just simply a good deed. No, it's a good deed that's leading to Christ. It's telling people, I've got something greater for you to taste. I'm going to leave you with this, and we can answer some questions. I know I want to be sensitive to time and questions. I'm a huge fan of candy. And I had my candy. Thank you. Oh, thank you. I like it all. And when my children go trick-or-treating for Halloween, they're still young. They're 10 and 12 years old. Obviously, you have to give an offering to your dad, and so I don't take the 10%. I prefer the 20 or 30%. And so, thank you so much, Amy. So, I like sweet candy and sour candy and chocolate candy. I like it all. My favorites are lifesavers. And, I love them because they're just, you can get look, there's all these different flavors, and you can just get, every time you get one, you get a different flavor. There's watermelon, there's lime, there's cherry. But one thing, as I was preparing this message tonight, I was thinking, lifesavers. And thinking about that 3 days ago, we celebrated the finding of the Stavro, the life-giving cross of Christ. And I was thinking just on as simple as my brain can be, and I'm no theologian, I'm just a priest trying to encourage you tonight. But I was just thinking about Christ and how He carries this cross for 800 yards, 8 football fields. That some historians add that the cross probably weighed about 100 pounds. And that He was, we're not going to go into detail, I don't think you need to hear all that, but I think you need to know all that, I will say that. That He goes through the cat of 9 tails, and He's beaten 39 times. And the 39 times is specific, it's actually mentioned in the Old Testament. Because 40 times they wanted to beat you so much, the Romans were perfect at this, almost to the point of death, but not death. Because 40 meant it would kill the person. And the Old Testament says that and prophesizing about Christ, says that He is beaten beyond recognition. that his beard is ripped out, that he's totally disfigured. And then an amazing line in the Bible says that by his stripes we are healed. And I just imagined my own life. And I imagined all the things that I struggle with as a priest and struggle as a person. And I imagined that here I am in the courtroom of life. That the Bible says that by your sin, that the wages of our sins is what? You should know this verse, is death. Not that you're a bad person, it's just you die. That we were sentenced to death. And that as the judge, as we were about ready to be sentenced to death, that Christ walked into the courtroom of your life and my life and said, wait, those ladies of Philoptochos, I want them to live. I'll die for them. For Nick Louh, who's just some priest in Jacksonville, Florida, I'm going to die for him too. For the people that are outside this building, I want to die for them too. But you've done nothing wrong. No, I know, but I want to die for them. And that Jesus went from every single one of us and said, I'll take it. I'll take that pain. And I think that for us, what God did for us is that in some way, he saved our life. Because he died, we live. Because he died, we live. And I think all that he's telling us is, listen, I saved your life. I was your lifesaver. I was your lifesaver. And I'm asking you to go save someone else's life. Like I need you to go save someone else's life, to be a lifesaver in their life. I think he'd look over us and say, hey, Philoptochos, and those of you that are watching us live right now, or you're downloading this message, that maybe he would tell you, hey, listen, don't stop listening to the cries of this world, because I never stopped listening to the cries when you were crying to me. Like never turn your back to the problems that you see in this world, because I never turned my back on you. Like never stop walking to find the problems in this world, because I never stopped walking towards you. Friends, we are the arms and the feet of Christ. And he is yearning for us. He's yearning for us to remember that choices lead, feelings follow. That we, as a people, will recognize that heaven is our home, not this earth. That we are called to recognize that my time on this earth is short, so I need to slow down and look around. That I need to not judge, but love. I need to walk with them. Use my gifts. And I need to lead them, let them taste. Because you and me, we are the everybody that God needs to help the somebody who's in a battle right now, today. Thank you. God bless you. Γέροντα, ευχαριστούμε. Shukran akiyat. I did little parting favors for you all, these lifesavers. On this auspicious occasion, I just didn't want to take up so much of the time. Then I don't know if you don't. What you would. Okay, so we can answer questions, and the floor is yours. So please feel free to.
How about comments instead of questions?
Comments.
I think those as well. Well, I'm thankful. I'm thankful that you were able to be here today. I'm thankful that I was able to get here today. And once again, you have energized and enlightened and inspired the Philoptochos women. We're going to bring you back and back and back until we get the message. But I thought there was a lot of what you said today that resonated deeply with Philoptochos women. We are also concerned for our fellow men, and Georgia and all of us who have participated in the Feed the Hungry programs. One of the things that sticks in my mind over and over again was the young man who said, people don't look at us. We're not visible to the world. We're invisible. And Lily, I remember you were standing with me and I've seen all the ladies do it, that you just reached out and hugged them. So there is so much value in everything that you've urged us to reflect upon. And you've given us, once again, lots to think about, and it's wonderful. There's lots that Philoptochos can do, much, much more every day. Something else there's a new need, and sadly, there's a new problem that needs to be addressed, but we know that with inspiring messages, we will be worthy we hope we'll be worthy of the message at least. So, anybody?
We have a question over here.
Great.
You can stand up.
Oh, was it?
Yeah,
it was
you.
just a comment.
Oh,
It was
comment.
actually a
Sure,
comment.
that's fine.
I wanted to thank you. So my daughter started high school in September, and they opened up clubs. So you had to pick a club or two. And we weren't sure what she wanted to do. We pointed out a couple that we thought would be good, and she kind of poo-pooed it. And on Sunday, my husband had to drive her to a swim lesson. And he played your sermon, okay? Played your latest sermon. And she came home, and she said, I picked a club. I said, what'd you pick? She said, Christian Athletes for Christ, which was what we told her, and she sort of poo-pooed. And after listening to your message, she chose it, and I wanted to thank you.
Let me tell you, thank God, because that was beautiful. Everything that I am is because of God. Because growing up, and I served the church that I grew up in, and talk about grace. They are so kind in Jacksonville, because I was a little bit of a, let's just say, an interesting young man at school. So, but in all honesty, everything I do, I give to glory to God. And I don't just say that, I mean that, because He blessed me with an amazing parents. My mother, my father, and my yaya, my grandmother, shaped my life. And for me, when you spend time and you see the hurt that goes on in this world and what we do to each other, I mean, I tell people sometimes, and I say this totally respectfully, that sometimes we're worried about an enemy that's outside of us, when the enemy sometimes is us. Like, we sometimes are doing things that break the icon, the icones that is in each and every one of us, and the way in which we treat each other. And when you study that God spent so much time, like so much time on this topic, it's like, wake up. You know, we say during the pre-sanctified liturgy, my soul, arise. Like, you're sleeping, wake up. And I think sometimes, I'm preaching to the choir, because what you do is you're trying to wake up everyone about what we're doing as a church, what we need to be doing as a church. But it is that importance that I think that we need to be constantly reminded of, that, hey, am I looking around? Am I looking for the people that St. John Chrysostom said, am I just praying to heaven, or am I looking at the poor person who's right next to me, who might be spiritually poor, emotionally poor? Any other comments or questions?
I have a comment, Father.
Yes.
I think you just tagged the new campaign for Philoptochos, be the lifesaver in the world. Come and join us.
Well, whatever works. Yes, ma'am.
I want to mention, my name is Eleni. I teach architecture at a high school, and it's very diversified by all kinds of kids. You know, we have the LGBT community, we have transgenders, we have everybody. And you know what? There's no judgment there. You know, that's why our school's so special in that sense. And I know that in my room, I try to always show love to these kids, you know, because they need that. A lot of them don't have solid homes, families. But it's not like we can preach, because we can't mention the church in the school. It's really hard because you're in a public school setting. But I try to do the best I can as a Christian to provide, you know, to show them love, you know. And it's so great, because I do glorify God, and He's always watching me, you know. He's always, I know I have His grace in the classroom, because I have kids there all the time. They feel safe, you know. And I just want to let you know that I needed to hear your words tonight It's the first time I've heard about you, you know, to be honest. I've never I'm really inspired because it just makes me going back to school the next day so much easier. You know, and I want to thank you for that.
Well, let me tell you, at the end of the day, and I love what you're saying, because the ego Nick would love to hear that all day. But what I shared with you today, guys, is his word. It is our church. This is when we talk about the Orthodox Church, the Greek, this is it. I mean, the ancient Greeks, when they were stomping their feet and they were stomping their spears, and they were saying that my shield will not, that my friend, my brother will not leave its shadow. This is who we are, and more important is who Christ is. And so what you're doing, I would say, keep it up. You know, many of you have heard this before, but people say that we are the visual Bible that people will ever, the only Bible that people will ever see. I mean, in other words, that they're watching our actions. And we have, I'm telling you, in my humble opinion, and I think that our church has a tremendous amount of offering because its theology is in philoxenia. You cannot take out the philoxenia of who we are. It's part of the ethos of the church. And so keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. Hello?
Can I just say something really quickly?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Growing up, I mean, my sister and I grew up with our father as a Greek Orthodox priest, so this was implemented into our lives, and I'm glad that it's, you know, stuck with me my entire life. But, you know, I have 3 little girls now who you know, 16, 14, and 11, and I instill it in their lives the best I can, and but not everybody has that in their lives, especially children. So I feel like what you're doing, this, and it is God through you, but I wish you could be in all of our parishes at some point. It's not, we have, you know, they go to Goya and they have Sunday school and they have Greek school and they have everything else, but this doesn't really exist often for them. So I would love to see something like this implemented in the churches, you know, for the young kids, not just the adults. We you know, it's implemented in our lives and we have this, but the kids don't have this as much as we do. And yes, there's Camp St. Paul and Metropolis of Boston Camp and all of that. But again, not all kids have the luxury to go to those camps. So I just wish this was in their lives more.
Thank you. Again, I thank you for that. But it is, I think the responsibilities, I think, are on us as the church, but also on us as individuals. Like we have to dig more into our prayer lives. Like we are a church that is central to it is prayer. Like if we don't get anything out of this entire prayer, we need to be in prayer. There is a level of that you can't just have a great speaker because, listen to me, I love the flattery, trust me. But it really, at the end of the day, it's what God, search my soul. And that's what David says. King David in the book of Psalms says, search my soul. Another area he says, Lord, teach me to number my days. Like the book of Psalms is a great area to just read. So I think that one of the things I would tell you is, like, yes, I think that we could do a lot, you know, and I think we are doing a lot. I mean, the fact that we have a building right now and moving mountains and doing that we were responsible already. How much did we give to Hurricane Dorian? I just saw it on the $50,000. I mean, that's outstanding. I don't know if we would have done that 10 or 20 or years ago if we had the means to do that. But I will tell you, the responsibility also is in us that there is a liturgia after the liturgia. There is this work that I have to do. It's not going to just come to me. I just can't wait for it to come. I've got to work at it my own self. I'll tell you the story. I was very fascinated with Billy Graham when I was growing up. I used to love the way he used to preach, and many of you know Billy Graham or know of him. Anyway, long story short, after I graduated the seminary, Holy Cross, I went to a school. It's called Gordon Conwell, which is just up the street. Literally, it's next to Jamaica Pond, right next to the, and it was founded by Billy Graham. So I was a typical, I shouldn't say this, let me not group all of our brothers. I was just an arrogant Greek Orthodox Christian. I just loved the Greek Orthodox and that we were the true church and that everything else was inferior. And I went to the seminary, by the way, when I was 20 years old as in the theological school. So not that makes any dispensation, but so the first day of class, I go to the professor is going, okay, tell me what churches you guys are from. So they eventually get to me, and I say, I'm from the Greek Orthodox Church, and we are the true church, like that. Have you ever heard of the Greek Orthodox Church? And we are literally a half a mile from where they are. And he said something that has brought me to my knees. He said, Nick, he said, I know of the Orthodox Church. He goes, the problem is I haven't seen the Orthodox Church. And what he was basically saying is, you, Nick, are talking a lot about this church, but what are you doing? What are you doing about it? And that's the challenge that I feel for me. That's what moves me to do these kind of presentations. It's because I feel like we need to lead the pack, not be followers in the pack. We have to lead it. And that's my, one of the things that kind of motivates me. And I'll be honest with you, and many of you may not know this, is, my family is Palestinian. And when I was growing up in our church that I'm in now, back in the day, I would go in the church hall and I would sit by myself and no one would talk to us. And I would sit there on that couch right outside the priest office, the office that I'm in right now. And I would sit there and no one would say anything. Or they would come just hi, but there was no interpersonal stuff. And I used to tell my mom, why are we going to this church? I mean, we're not Greek. Why are we doing this? And she said, this is the church that you're going to grow up in. This is the church. And my dad was adamant that we were going to go to that church. And then one day, one of the ladies in our church, who was the youth director of the church at that time, Harriet Wilson, who's the wife of Father George Wilson, she says, Nick, you are always in church. You don't miss a Sunday. Father Paul Kostopoulos, could use someone like you in the altar. Why don't you go to the altar? And it was a simple statement. I mean, looking at it now, it's not that important. But at that time, for a 8-year-old boy, it lit me on fire. And from that moment on, I went up to the altar and I haven't left. I mean, I'm still in that altar. But and I'm not planning on going anyway. But my point is that had it not been for that one person, I was in a battle. I was in a battle of just negative thinking. And had it not been for that presbytera to say, you know what, Father Paul could use you, but saying it with a loving way, look at where we're at now. You just don't know what people's stories are. Yeah, I'm so sorry. Go ahead. How are we on time? I don't know what we are on time.
We're good on time.
You're on time?
And
He's good. Yeah, sorry.
Is having conversation, one person listens and somebody talks, is also considered as a ministry. When you sit down and you learn from people of their stories and things like that. Because thank God I got today's session from Facebook. If I didn't buy it, I wouldn't have been here.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a blessing.
I'm glad you're here.
The thing is, can it be, because for my personal experience, I have been going through 2 different issues with my health and my financial problems. And the thing is, what can I do
Thank you.
other things? So the best thing I could do, and have done it for the past couple of years, is to listen to people, because I love listening to their stories. Especially from older people with their experience, like my dad, who grew up as an orphan in Crete, and he told me all these challenges he faced. I don't even know how he survived them.
What you're sharing is, many of you may already know this, but the way that we are hardwired as humans, the way God created us, is there's something inside of us called a happiness trifecta. That when you do an act of kindness, like you were saying, you feel good, dopamines, endorphins, oxytocin, these are neurological transmitters. Basically, they are the feel-good emotions. Like God hardwired you to actually go out and want to do something, and when you do something good, you feel better. And I always tell people that depression cannot grow in a giving heart. When you're constantly giving, it's very difficult for sadness to grow. Yes. Hey, sweetie.
Remind me, conversations towards the end, the questions and the answers, remind me, a priest once said to me, when we were talking about Philoptochos and all that they do, and we help the church, and we donate here in the church, and they said you have to reach out to the community more, to the people who are sitting and walking by. And what he said was, if the church disappeared tomorrow, would anybody notice?
Right. That haunts me. That haunts me. And I tell you, in Jacksonville, what we do, and that's something that we have heard a lot of. And I mean, we are purposeful in the way in which we do things outreach. And we are nowhere near where we need to be, I'll be honest with you. But every month we are feeding the hungry. We are at the Ronald McDonald House. We make prayer shawls. We make these little kindness cards that just tell people every day, when you come to church, go there, and a kindness card that simply pay for someone's gas that's behind you, pay for someone when you're on the food line at Chick-fil-A or wherever. But there's something every day you should be able to evaluate your life and say, you know what, I made a difference. I made a difference in someone's life.
Your ruler was practically not long enough for me. I was fortunate enough to, number one, to be a Spartan. Number two, my mother's brother died the 1st of April, one of the first Greek Orthodox priests in America, at 101 years old.
Wow, that's great.
He was always an inspiration to me and my siblings, because I came from Montreal, Quebec, Canada, where I was born and brought up. And he used to come from Pomfret, Connecticut, with Archbishop then Athenagoras. I'll never forget that gentleman in my life. It was like when he entered a room, it was like God came in, and his voice was something to behold. And my philosophy has always been in life, goodness is the force of the world.
Wow.
And that's what I live by.
That's excellent. I love that.
So I was just curious, it seems in these times we're so polarized for obvious political reasons, social reasons. People seem to be even farther apart than they used to be. All the wonderful things you said, I think, for someone like me who's traveled and seen a lot of the world and been blessed to have a lot of experiences that make me see the positive side of things and how I approach my life, and I know a lot of my friends here do the same. I'm curious, how do you suggest to reach across the aisle to those who may not be, say, of even our same faith, who are of the more negative thought process, or who maybe are more difficult to see your side? How do we find our way to the middle so that we can all benefit from the messages that you're telling us today?
The greatest teacher in my understanding is our actions. That we win or lose people in the way in which we treat them, the way in which we act towards them. And I know that's very simplistic, and I don't mean to be too simplistic. But when that lawyer was challenging God and said, just can you boil this thing down for me? I can't get all this stuff. I'm struggling with it. And he said, love me with everything you have. Your heart, your mind, your soul. If you love me, you will love him. Even if he has a different political view, even if he has a problem with this, even if his values, you will love him. But you cannot love me if you don't love him. And so the lens that you look through everything is constantly saying, God, I want my eyes to be just like your eyes. Like he didn't have to walk into the courtroom of our life. Like the fact that we even have a world that we live in, or the fact that we can experience love, is simply by the grace of God. And sometimes we're so worried about building up the church itself that we forget who's the founder of that church. Like the Bible says that he is the head, he is the great hierarch of our church, and we need to love him. And if we love him and our focus is always on him, then naturally we're going to look at those people. My grandmother, I'll give you an example. My and my father, my grandmother used to always tell us that our ancestry is not from the Middle East, it's from Crete. I haven't done the 21, whatever, the 21andMe to know that for sure not. But my grandmother, God rest her soul, she used to look at me and she'd say, be careful of the Jews. Because she lost her house in 1948. And so she was very much concerned and said, be careful. Don't have a friend that's a Jewish person. And you can fill in the name of someone that you might have on your own. Some of the God Squad that Maria was mentioning, I'm sitting on a board with a Jewish rabbi and a Protestant priest and an imam. And if my grandmother could see me now, she would go like, she would, you know. And I mean this in the most respectful way, I have so much in common with this, my Jewish rabbi friend. Like, I love him and he loves me. I mean, and he knows about where I come from and what I believe in and what's at my core. And we hang out. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is, if Christ is the icon that we're constantly looking at, and he has to be. I always tell people, if you don't make time for God, the devil will make time for you. So you have to, on purpose, say, God, I'm waking up in the morning and the first thing I'm doing, that before my feet hit that ground, I know that I'm going to be tempted today. So let my eyes be your eyes. Let my ears be your ears. Let my legs be your legs. My arms be your arms. Because if not, the diabolos does not quit. He doesn't say, oh my gosh, you're in church, so let me just stop messing around with you or confusing you. He will continually do that. Yes, ma'am.
I had an experience this evening. Waiting to come here, I was had my car parked, and this gentleman came over to me, and he introduced himself. I had rolled down my window, and I said hi, and I said my name, and he started to talk to me. And I told him that I was going to this meeting this evening, and he asked me if he could come. And I said, I became frightened by him, and which was silly because there was no reason. He looked like a normal individual. And I said, oh no, I said, it's just for women, it's Philoptochos. And he went, oh, okay. He says, I would have liked to have attended your meeting. He was a Jewish gentleman, and he gave me his business card, and he said, if you're ever doing anything that's philanthropic, he said, I would love to get involved. He said, because I'm always doing things for Jewish people, but never for everyone. And I went, okay. I said, it happens to be this weekend I'm having a program at my church. And I said, it's the only Greek Orthodox church on Staten Island. So if you'd like to attend, you're more than welcome. And I got myself out of it by doing something kind, but in the beginning I felt intimidated. And I felt sad about it, that I didn't trust him.
And believe me when I say that, I'm not in any way saying that you shouldn't be vigilant and be aware. I mean, right. But I do think that, the Bible says that, that person could be an angel of God. And, yeah, right. And I want to say this, when you look at the wealth of the Greek people in this country, and the academic education of the Greek people in this country, it is extraordinary. And we didn't get it, it didn't come easy. The generations that have helped to build, the blood, sweat, and tears that helped to build this facility, years after years, they worked so hard. But they also, I guarantee you, at some point had someone help them a little bit. That was not part of our church. And I think a legacy that we're always looking for is, I never want to allow myself, Father Thomas Hopko once said, never allow your culture to be your faith, but let your faith be your culture. And culture is great. I love our culture. I'm all about it. But at the end of the day, I want my faith to be leading my culture and leading the people around.